Right, y'all, we have our second speaker, Jessica. She's, how would I introduce you? Design engineer, creative technologist?
Creative technologist, yes.
Creative technologist.
Is this plugged in?
I think you need to give
Oh,
us
okay. There we go.
All right.
Cool. Anyway, hello. So many of you over here, but I can't pivot that much further. Anyway, so yeah, I'm Jess. I identify as a creative technologist, I guess, but whatever you call it. I'm currently employed, but I used to work at Canva, working in product design, basically across a bunch of different things. But background's mostly in software engineering. I definitely don't consider myself a designer. I don't open Figma, I guess, for fun, only with dread. And so today I'm talking about, so title here is designing systems. Specifically because I don't think a design system is actually really much of a system at all. It's just really sort of a collection of things that we've made. It's a collection of patterns. We haven't actually thought about a system in the same way we think about an algorithm. So it's really, it's almost like a checklist, and it's really, it might not be the intent, but it really is there to sort of like stifle and sort of like create limitations. And so it's for the benefit of the developers and the designers. It's not for the benefit of the user, but it's in that case, it's somewhat of a system, sort of like just to keep everyone in line, essentially. There's a good, and so you get something that's sort of like, quite uniform. And sort of like you look across, design systems, they all sort of are checking the same boxes. They might have their own bit of flair, and that they might have a slightly different gradient, Versus if you have a system and sort of like really think about different ways of we'll go into the details, I guess. But the idea is that sort of like we have like a bunch of different cells and sort of like the circles in there. But like if you had say a local design system for every cell and sort of like really think about the system in there, it can be quite simple, but then you bring it all together and then it's complex and beautiful and interesting and still like feels coherent. It's sort of like, and so really thinking about that, rather than focusing on the output, thinking about that system and really giving it sort of like the opposite of vibe coding it and sort of like going piece by piece, you're really sort of like breaking things down and sort of thinking about the problem and sort of like putting that work up front. How many of you guys are familiar with this book, Designing Programs? Nice, okay, we've got two. So there's three in the room. So this is a book from the 1960s, Designing Programs by Karl Gerstner, and sort of very, comes from the Swiss school of design, sort of very like engineering and sort of like mathematically derived. It's like, they're all obsessed with typography back then. But yeah, I love this, like, it's sort of like, instead of solutions, the designer provides programs, and sort of like, and the program can then become like, comes up with solutions, essentially. So, I thought I love this book because it's so like ahead of its time in the sense that we'll go through it and sort of like thinking about design programmatically before you can use a computer. It's very like kind of weird in that sense. But there's also like, it's a collection of essays, but I don't really, this isn't completely unrelated, but there's like a little offhand comment about, is Helvetica just a trend? You know, like, and that was in the 60s. And so like, is sans serif just a trend? No, it's not. And so this is like, so there's the concept of, so there's a morphological sort of box, and sort of like being able to like, and this is one of the examples in the book, and the idea is that you take a single line, and so like you have a box, and so like you have, it's a grid, it doesn't quite come up here, but it's a grid, and so like you just put, between one node and another, you add a line, right? That's quite simple. So like, then if you make it, so like, let's say like it's a 1 by 1, there's one line, 2 by 2 grid, 3. And so like, you're building things up, but what if you then add symmetry, like rotational symmetry into this? And so now you're building something a bit more complex, right? And so you could see, say, something like this starts off a bit more simple, so like, what if you, and then you sort of like, you've all magically sort of like come up with something like quite interesting and sort of like, and things that I wouldn't have personally thought about. Let's say, let's clear these guys. So yeah, there's just a system of rules that sort of like, you've come up with something sort of like much more interesting, like it's more than the sum of its parts, essentially. So the typogram, so like this is like for like logo, and so this is very like graphic design back in like 60s, 70s, and sort of like, and the idea is that you come up with all the parameters of say design, and sort of like you don't actually know what you want to design, but I need to put text on a page. What are all the ways that I can do? What are the parameters that I can control? And as a designer, you might intuitively come up with this, and so like you go, okay, I want my font to be Helvetica. I want my, it'd be nice if it's a bit bold, sort of thing. And so like, well, actually, like before you get there, like break down all the things that you can sort of like tackle, and so like text, and so like you can have this basic sort of thing. But then say if we like. What are the ways that sort of like putting that on the page? And in this case, we've got, it's actually a group of words. So like we have different, we've sort of like distorted it slightly, and sort of like, and it is quite a engineering based approach, but you get something interesting, I think. Like I never know what any of these are, and so like, let's see, what else we got? Yeah, and so like, and then.
Design engineering, nice logo.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the typograms, like specifically for like this like sort of logo idea generation, and it's sort of like a way of enabling creativity through a system. And there are a bunch of rules, and so that's like from a design perspective. And so like a lot of these things you throw away, but it's like a framework to get started. Another example, quite in the book, is photography. It's sort of like, and just taking a bunch of photos of something like a product piece. Say in this case, I did it in 3D, and it's like a cube, and so like just like being able to like explode different versions, and so like, and then I can pick, as opposed to like, I don't know if you've personally had this issue where you have like a piece of content, an image. And that's the one that's provided for you, and then it's not very good, right? And it's nice to have options. And so the idea is that, and this is completely unrelated to like, UI design, graphic design. It's just like, say you're a photographer with a camera, and so like just approaching something and like taking these specific shots as you go. He also actually, Gerstner actually has another book specifically just focused on text, and so like, and so this is a program for poetry, and so you have like these sort of like little cards, and so like they're a bunch of just a collection of phrases, and so like you build them together, and then so we have, give me a few words for a woman to sing a truth that allows before night falls without sorrow to build a house. Oh, that's interesting. What if we sort of mix it up? Yeah, like it's sort of like play. You basically have created a bunch of different poems from like just simple pieces, right? And so like, do you repeat things? And so like you can just again like just for the idea is that it's the system that's sort of like, and it's malleable across different modalities. This is a different one where like you have a seed word, and sort of like you have a dictionary, and sort of like, and then just generate words from that, and then this is a way of like building up a glossary that you can then later use, and so like, and again you're just like browsing, again like you're not like doing, and I don't know about you, but it feels especially in the days of AI, and sort of like where you're just like generating something and then seeing how it feels, and sort of like and this is you don't need AI. It's sort of like you can just like design the system, but it's feels very similar. Have anyone played with like variable fonts? Yeah, okay, like quite a few, yeah. So Google came up with RobotoFlex, which is like, this is the variable font in that you have, I think it's like 10 axes that you can actually like, as opposed to most do like italic slants, and so like a variable font sort of like, you're going from like, yeah, you can go, instead of like having different sort of masters that you just are stuck with, like italic versus non-italic, you can sort of like interpolate between the two. And so another thing that Gerstner did is like, specifically for like text design, font design, so like being able to like play around with different forms. So like, and RobotoFlex is a good font in that you can sort of like design the font yourself with just this one font file, and that like you have you can sort of control the stroke, the counter width, like widths, and sort of like we can play around with like a bunch of different options. So like, and see how it feel, and like feel like different fonts. And sort of like, again, like taking this from like designing a font. So this is probably his claim to fame, I guess, like in that he loves a good grid. And so if it doesn't make sense, so we'll start off with like, so like we think of like, say like a 12 column grid, right? That's back in the bootstrap days, like, I remember that. And so he used this for like design, like, yeah, magazine or like editorial layouts. And so like, so we can progressively layer on different grids. And so now you get something that's like actually quite complex, but it's actually like, if you look at just a single layer and put something on that single layer, it's actually quite simple. And so what he would do, and then you can sort of like generate sort of like images and sort of like lay out things in a bunch of different ways, and sort of like play around with, you can tell it's really random when I get like, fills in that one grid item. And so like, imagine, yeah, like in filling out content and sort of like placing content on this grid as opposed to like your typical web layout. And it's still programmatic, it's still systematic, right? You still have the rules, but like you have like a really interesting, you can, yeah, potentially tackle really interesting layouts this way. A bit of a sort of like sidestep away from Gerstner, but anyone here do like much like data visualization at all? Okay, not too much. But yeah, so in data visualization, there's quite a lot of like research into like a lot of academic work into like creating like grammars and sort of like schemas for like breaking down a data visualization. So in this case, this is an example. So Vega is a very common like grammar, and so the idea is it takes breaks down like data visualization into its components. And so like something that's like a scale, you can have a linear scale, or yeah, it's an exponential scale. There's a bunch, if you think of any data visualization, so like, and all the different permutations of like sort of working, like creating data and charts. There's quite a lot there, and so like, but and marks are like the little image, like a little dot is like a mark in data viz land. And so like in the actual like data here is like a very simple table, but the idea is that this isn't like custom drawn, like this is dictated by this JSON file, which feels kind of like, it's like, oh, that's interesting. And so like, you can imagine how you would sort of like lay this out, like sort of like yourself, like you were drawing it, so you'd be like, okay, like go to here, and I'll do the angle here. And so like, we're going to like a higher level of thinking of things of like as a grammar. And I speak about data visualizations because I think in UI we don't consider this like approach because we can get away with not building the system, whereas like you have a data visualization and it becomes so complex and you have like millions of data points to reason about. It's physically impossible to sort of like create a data visualization covering that. So there have been ways, and so like rules and systems sort of like to navigate sort of like presenting data effectively. really good book on this is Visualizing Complexity. And so like this is like design systems for data viz. So like, and it breaks down basically everything that you can think of like, of how you could like visually represent data. And so like, and apply like your own like branding and system to data. So it's like, yeah, the diagrammatical dimensions, or like how you visually, like how does it represent data, as opposed to like all the things that are like make it sort of like add your brand and sort of like add your own visual flair. Because that is also encoded into like a lot of the data visualization. So I'll share these slides later. There's lots of different links as well. But so I mentioned data viz because I used to work at Canva on their data visualization team. And so like, and the one thing is like being able to like make data visualization accessible for, imagine the Canva user for data viz. Like, and so like, and it's quite a tricky problem of like, how do you understand data that you might not necessarily understand yourself? You want to present something and you've got a meeting coming up. You don't know how to like reason about the data. But you also don't know how to present it like beautifully, like nicely or coherently even. And so the idea is we would love to like automate that essentially. And so like make those decisions like, oh, you have this data set and you have these preferences, like, yeah, we'll make you a beautiful chart. If you think like, which sounds nice, but like it explodes in complexity quite, as I mentioned. But there are like different ways of approaching this. One is it's Draco and now Draco 2, and if there's any engineers here that are familiar with like constraints programming, like answer solvers, like, no? Okay, yeah. And so the idea is that you can like encode a bunch of different rules, and in this case it's a ASP answer set program. The idea is that basically, so like I have this histogram, and the reason I have histogram is because the data looks like this, like, and we can encode that by like actually being like, okay, if the data type is this, or if it's a very big data set, like if this is a lot smaller, it makes more sense probably to be a bar chart, like you don't need a histogram. And so like, you can have a bunch of hard constraints, like if this was a data set that said apple pear, like it would be impossible to make this a histogram. Like it doesn't like make sense in this case. Because it's not numerical, like you can't count it in that way. But so that would be a hard constraint versus you can have soft preferences, and so like if it's like, and so like you're basically like creating a bunch of rules sort of thing. And so like, and each one is can be quite simple to define, and then you build up to something that sort of like can theoretically handle anything you throw at it. And so like, I hope and so like, when we think about, if we go back to like, say, UI and sort of layout, we haven't really, like, this is Figma's algorithm from like, I think this is like late 80s. It's sort of like, the idea is that it tried to like come up with like this, like its own grammar, so like of ways of like, okay, we break down like UI, and so like, there's a heading, and it might feel quite similar to a lot of HTML, but like, you can have a group, and the group has a picture and a text block. And so like, how do we lay that out on a grid in this case? Like versus if we had heading and text versus gallery, yeah, there's being able to just play around with like all the different permutations. And so like, as opposed to say, I'd say like the Figma, like modern approach, I blame Figma, but like they were doing this in Photoshop as well. Like of just like, looking at a screen and sort of like dragging and resizing, and sort of like, and then sort of like, okay, like it looks good at this breakpoint, like, and sort of like, and then sort of, yeah, just like, it's kind of like whack-a-mole of sort of like being able to like just tackle try and being very reactive to design problems, as opposed to thinking like, anticipating that we'll be in a bunch of different like contexts that we don't know about, and having rules and systems like to tackle those. And this one is, so this is an attempt at like sort of like creating a bunch of different its own rules and sort of like, yeah, like grammars and sort of like and constraints of like, okay, like a container can contain a card view, and you might be approaching this sort of like in a type system or just most likely through docs and sort of like just sort of like ad hoc of yes, my card view can have an image, or like, and so you go, okay, well, if that's first, then I'll put this here and sort of like slot that in and sort of like, yeah, just very, again, like reactive problems. So like, as opposed to like really like anticipating all these things, like, you know, all the parameters up front, and really is like approaching it as if you're an engineer, funnily enough. So yeah, so this is like going back to like our morphological box. And so like, you'll see something like this, and it's common in like design systems, of sort of like being able to like, this is like scales, and so like, this is the idea of that. So like the permutations of like the different like acceptable versions of your button. So that's one way of like approaching, say, like a morphological box, and just playing around with things there. But and so that's one piece of the puzzle, I think, is like being able to like anticipate all the different permutations of your button in reality, like as it comes up against like different use cases. Versus say something a bit more like being able to like, what about at the design stage? Like how much is happening at the design stage of like really being able to like all the different ways I can like play around with the button and to like think about like make, and this is just a little program for like playing around with, okay, like what am I going to, and these are all the parameters that sort of like came up with like of like typography and emphasis and structure, and so like you end up with a bunch of different like permutations and sort of like, and some will resonate and some won't. But again, it's like a little nice, let's say, different ways of sort of like, we can play around with animations and sort of like, what if we worked with case? And so like, again, yeah, just different way of sort of like coming up with like, again, it comes back to like, again, like taste, I guess. And so like thinking like, but ways of like enabling like taste selection, and so like being able to like play around with ideas before, yeah, basically approaching problems sort of like, yeah, in a systematic way to sort of like make beautiful things, which just feels often like at odds, I guess. But yeah, that's me essentially. I hope there wasn't really a main like do this sort of like take it. There's mostly just like thought starters, but I hope I prompted some ideas. Thank you. Alrighty.
That was really cool. Maybe one question?
One question. I was like, I had a timer on my watch and I didn't press start. Was it?
You a bit overdid it, right?
Yes.
Any thoughts about how this might impact the sort of generative AI or like generative UI sort of, idea?
Yeah, I think the reason why it's can be, I mean, like say I'm the individual, I'm a human. I could also be an agent, right? Like a secret agent, like an AI agent, sort of like doing this work myself, like which is often you'll find that it just builds something and then you're like, oh, that it uses it as shit easing, right? Like, and so like you didn't, but if you said being able to like explode those permutations, and you see this quite a lot in like the more visual, say like Mid-Journey, right? Like it's always 4 images because they know that. Like there is no right, there is no functional output that's like correct. It's like you're choosing. And as for like within AI, and I think of say like web design and web development is like the idea is that it's infinite, the amount of permutations that you can deal with. And so like we've sort of for a long time just said, well, okay, we're going to limit that like we build systems, like a design system to like just be like, okay, that's like no variation. Like there's a team that says, no, you can't add that. Like you're using that in the wrong way, sort of thing. And then even though that could be perfectly valid. Versus with AI, there's the potential to like, actually, we have an infinite amount of like resource that can potentially tackle these really interesting sort of like problems. And so that's the hope, I think, of that, like being able to explore. Like if I have like a grid of like 1 million permutations and like I can't reasonably like tackle that, but an AI agent could. And so like, yeah, I don't know, yeah.
All right, thank you, Jessica.